Thank you so much, viewers. It's wonderful coming your way again this Saturday. This is your simulcast program running on GTV and Radio Ghana. It means that we are cutting across the 10 regions of Ghana. We say a big thanks to you for the patience you have given us. This is another episode of Single Spine, the issues. You would all agree with me that government's white paper on the single spine pay policy released in November 2007 mandates the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to link pay to productivity through effective performance management. And this is what we will be discussing today on the show, performance management in the public sector, linking pay to productivity. You would also agree with me that good performance management helps everyone in an organization to know what the organization is trying to achieve, their role in helping the organization achieve that goal, the skill and competencies they need to fulfill their role, the standards of performance required, how they can develop their performance and contribute to the development of that organization, and how they will go about it. We will link this with pay and productivity. My guest with me in the studio is Mr. Emmanuel Kwame, Director in Charge, Performance Management, Monitoring and Product Evaluation with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. We also have Dr. Shaibu Ahmed Gariba, Director General, Management, Development and Productivity Institute. He is also a labor economist, and they have joined us today. Let me say a big welcome to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time you have also given us. Let's first start by talking about what productivity is, the indicators, and how we can measure productivity. I would want to start with you.
Yeah.
Dr. Gariba.
Thank you. Productivity is simply dividing the output by the inputs. Inputs into production includes capital, labor, and land. So if you want to know the contribution of any of the inputs, you look at the output as against that input. The normal way to do it, or the international accepted way to do it, is to divide the output, or GDP usually, at the macro level, or at a micro level, the output by the hours worked. Hours worked is used because you could also do it by dividing by the number of employees. But that may hide a lot of things. Some people work part-time. Others come to work, they don't even work at all. I mean, what I call presenteeism. They are present, but they don't work.
They don't work.
And all of that. So we tend to use hours worked. And hours worked in Ghana may also be misleading because of this presenteeism issue. So measuring productivity in itself is a very difficult task. Particularly even in the service sector. If it is a product, if it's a business, you can always take the number of items you've produced and look at the number of hours people worked, and you can tell how much is produced in an hour. But when it is in the services sector, it becomes a difficult challenge.
Is it a universal challenge, or this is something which pertains to us within our part of the world?
It is a universal challenge. It's a difficulty measuring services. The normal, the rule of thumb most people use is to break the services into 3 components. They do what they call the flow chart, where you break it into 3 major processes and give indicators to each of the process, so that based on that you can be able to identify whether those indicators are being met or not. For example, if you have, let's say, let's talk about social services, providing services to people. You can look at the number of files people work in an hour. Also, you can look at other stakeholders you have to respond to, like the government, the ministries, the public, and others. You can take that also as a process, so that you look at the different processes and come out with how many hours do people spend to produce a particular thing. If it's a legal department, it's easy. You can say, oh, we found a solution for this person. It took 3 hours. 2 people were working on it, and he paid us 1,000. So we can divide it by the hours and know the productivity. So it's a difficult challenge everywhere, not just our.
I am just asking myself a very simple question. If it indeed it is a difficult challenge, how come there's a very simple equation to define productivity?
There is a difference between theory and practice.
Okay.
They say the detail is in the devil is always in the detail.
Yeah.
When you are doing it at a theoretical level, you can do the mathematics and everything. But when you come to dealing with human beings, you then begin to have the challenges. And that's where you need an expert to help you develop that flow chart.
Yeah.
And you need all kinds of inputs to be able to determine what are the key processes. Okay? And there you can put indicators on these key processes and be able to measure
it is the indicator that I am much interested in. So you can, if you can help our viewers and listeners to appreciate what we're doing, what are some of these indicators?
Well, the indicators is always an output.
Okay.
But what you're looking at is, if it's the services sector, what is the output of that distance? So you have to begin to look at what processes are involved. A file comes from me to my ministry. I have to work on it, and it goes to another ministry. That ministry has to work on it, and then it comes back to me, and it goes to the public. Okay, so I can have three processes here. I can have, when the file comes to me, what happens? How fast does it go to the other ministry? When it goes to the other ministry, what happened? How fast does it come back to me? And then it gets to the public. So you have three processes that you can look at. So it's always the output. But the difficulty in services is to quantify the output or value the output. That's the biggest challenge.
So the point you're developing here is that it is much easier to determine the outputs if you find yourself, let's say, in a manufacturing sector.
Yes, exactly. Because there you have the goods you are producing.
The numbers,
so you
in terms of production.
Yeah, so you can always divide it by the hours worked and say, look, the productivity in an hour is this much. But when it comes to services, it's a big challenge.
Okay, I will still be with you, and then I'll push another one to you before I go over to Mr. Kwame. Is competence an ingredient in measuring productivity?
Obviously, productivity has to do with quality, okay? And competence actually gives quality is appeal. So yes, when people are competent, the thing is that if it takes the less competent person 2 hours to do the work, a competent person might take 30 minutes or an hour. Okay, so productivity is completely related to competence and quality.
Okay, now Mr. Kwame, well-meaning persons, including His Excellency the President of the Republic, have raised concerns over the years as to whether there's a linkage of pay to productivity in the public service. And we are doing this specifically tying it to performance management. And you are in charge of that sector within the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. And so I'm sure you will help us appreciate what we have talked about in terms of productivity, how to measure the indicators, and whether performance management really is at the center of this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, of course, as you rightly said from the beginning, productivity has to do with labor economics. But performance management actually is a strategy that is used to enhance productivity in every organization. Now, performance management is a cycle. It starts from planning work, setting targets, monitoring work, and then at the end of the performance cycle, evaluating whether set targets have been achieved. And this can be done at the corporate level, the departmental level, the unit level, and at the team or individual level. Now, if you set targets, people are more focused on what should be done in an organization. And in that process, productivity is raised at the end of the day. Because you know that this is what we are supposed to do as a department, or as a corporate entity. And at the unit level, this is what we are going to do. At the individual level, this is what I'm supposed to do at the end of the year. And when everybody is so focused, at the end of the day, we are more likely to achieve our corporate objectives and in the process, raise productivity.
Good. Now, is this target you talked about set annually, quarterly, or what?
Yeah, normally it is set annually. And
So anything that falls short of that will not pass for performance management. Am I to understand that?
not exactly. As I said from the beginning, performance management is a cycle.
Okay.
It is a never-ending cycle which starts from planning. So maybe perhaps it will be useful to mention strategic planning here.
Okay.
Yeah, so an organization has a strategic planning. All that strategic planning plan contains is the objectives that a company or a corporation wants to achieve, at the end of the year or during a set period. Now, when these objectives are set, departments draw their business plans from these objectives. And then from these business plans, individual targets are set. So during the year, these targets are, actually monitored. People are actually monitored to see whether they are on course towards the achievement of these objectives. Now, at the end of what we call the performance cycle, you have evaluation, and that is where you decide whether targets have been achieved or not achieved. If they have not been achieved, what was the reason why they were not achieved? The individual perhaps they don't have the competencies to be able to perform the job. In that case, you do something.
Which is?
Which is perhaps finding out if he hasn't got the competency, trying to find out what actually he lacks, and then equipping him with that knowledge and skill to be able to perform on the job. Now, we can have a situation where it is the person has the capability to do the job, but he wouldn't do it. And then maybe you have to look at other factors. And most likely, it might be due to motivation. There's something at the workplace that does not motivate this person. So he's sitting on the job more or less. So you find out these things, and as you address the situation so that you improve performance.
Okay. Now, in the area of competency, I'm sure somebody listening to us or watching us will quickly ask, why would you then go ahead to engage the services of an incompetent person, and then you turn around to say, I'm setting up performance management targets, which cannot be achieved anyway?
Well, it is not a case of employing an incompetent person. Well, we all know how we get people into organizations. You might have interviewed a person and found out at the interview that this person has at least the average competencies to perform the job. Take for example a fresh graduate from school who has never had any hands-on experience on the job. So you assume that, well, this guy has this qualification and therefore he'll be able to perform. Then you give him a number of activities, or if you like, duties to perform. And perhaps this guy has no Excel knowledge, MS Excel. And he has to do a job that requires the knowledge of, Excel.
Yeah.
Well, this guy was not trained as a computer, whatever, specialist in school. So, well, you don't assume, even though we are in a computer age, you don't assume that he has that knowledge. So you give him work to do, work that will, entail the application of Excel. And you realize that this guy lacks, that skill. This will not mean that the person is competent per se. So you help him along the way by equipping him.
As an organization, you provide the tools for training, you provide the tools for developing the person's capacity to meet up with performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Where does personal development come in then?
Where personal development, these days we talk of learning organizations.
Okay.
Learning organizations simply mean that, you can take your own initiative, to develop yourself. You don't have necessarily to wait for the organization to give you the
provide those
opportunity.
tools and all that.
Yeah. If you're ambitious enough and you have your career plan in mind, you can do that with the support of the organization.
I guess I should push this one to Dr. Gariba, because he is an authority on this, and so I'm sure he would help us also appreciate what we're talking about. So we're talking about competencies, we're talking about meeting the objectives of the organization, and then also looking at personal development, which plays a major role in situations where organization has not provided the framework for a consistent training, it is the responsibility of the individual to develop himself or herself. That can also be a challenge in a way.
Yeah, it is a big challenge. The point is, like, I mean, you've rightly hit on the nail.
Yeah.
What is missing in most of these things? Training.
Yeah.
Most organizations don't do training. They don't send their people for training. Training is key. If you find that somebody has limitations, how do you make up for those limitations? It's through training. Okay, but the problem with training too is that as an organization, you spend money to train people.
Exactly.
After you train them, you don't have control of them.
Yeah.
They can leave you and go to somewhere else. So it's an external cost. It's an externality to the organization. So most organizations, the first thing they cut on the budget is training. But then individuals too have a responsibilities to themselves. So people take charge of this thing and begin to develop themselves. But I've said that if somebody is not doing well in a place for, let's say, lack of competencies, and the person does not improve, it is as much a failure of the whole system as it is of the individual. So systems have to look out and say, look, why is this person, year in and out, they come out not meeting targets? What can we do to help them meet their targets? Because once they improve and become more productive, it contributes to the organization. So personal development has become a way to go. Most people take charge of their own development and develop themselves. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Kwame, in your encounter with some of these institutions that you have migrated onto the single spine, did it get to you that some of them have not clearly set out performance management systems that they are to work with?
Well, performance management in the Ghana Public Service is not a new concept, so to say. There was this project in the civil service called Civil Service Performance Improvement Program. It started way back in 1994, and I think closed at during the year 2003. Okay, so we cannot say that there's no performance. This is not a new concept at all. Yeah. So public service has performance management, some performance management. The issue has to do with how effective these systems have been over the years in actually raising productivity.
So how come the public sector have always been bashed? And people keep talking about the fact that people come to work, they are not seen, performing, people working as and when they like. They go, when it comes to bonuses, they all enjoy. When it comes to pay, if these schemes you have just spoken about have been there, why is it that we keep recording poor performance, we keep recording low productivity levels and all that?
Well, it is exactly what I'm saying, that we know of performance management, and if you have heard of State Enterprises Commission, for example, that is a central management agency responsible for subvented agencies and SOEs, or state-owned enterprises. And these organizations sign performance contracts with the SOEs and subvented agencies. Now, what happens is that this thing is done at that global level. So at the end of the day, organizations, pass as having, achieved their targets. But what actually happens is that these things they don't trickle down to the individual level. So an organization may, have a contract with a central management agency, but the individual human being or staff does not have targets to achieve. Okay? So for example, that is why people might complain that where people are lazy on the job, they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. But at the global level, somehow, these organizations manage to achieve their targets. But if you want to do performance management seriously, and especially the sort of performance management that the White Paper wants Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to do, then it means that individual job holders must be held accountable for performance or non-performance.
How do we go about this, and how do we improve on productivity within the public service then?
Well, there's a culture in this country.
Which
People are employed
yeah,
based on your educational credentials,
Yes.
whether you have a BA, MA, or PhD. And people get promoted based on the number of years you've spent
Yeah.
there. In fact, nothing about productivity comes in.
comes in, yes.
So it's a whole culture. Now you are talking about a culture, restructuring that kind of thinking into a situation where actually you link productivity with pay.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Kwame said, you have to have targets
Yeah.
right up to the individual levels. So that based on that, those key indicators, you can be able to tell whether people are productive or not.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, one thing that we lose track of in this country is that one of the major problems for productivity, or one of the major issues that reduces productivity in the country, is mental illness. When we talk about mental illness, people think of madness. No,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. Depression,
Yeah.
all kinds of
Stresses
and all kinds of things. We don't pay attention to these things.
them.
These are actually things that affect productivity. Attitudes affect productivity a lot. And I said, when we were growing up, there used to be Kwame Nkrumah days. There used to be work and happiness.
Yeah.
They taught you to sing about it. There was happiness in working. Okay, those
Was
things.
it not because there was motivation attached to that?
There's motivation too, but I'm talking about the educational aspect, because it has to be an education. It has to be a national exercise. When our champion came, Operation Feed Yourself,
Yeah.
the noise, there's a national. You can create a whole productivity movement in the country by taking on some things like that. And at Champion's time, we were able to produce a lot of food. So there are ways we can do it. We should start. We need to start at the primary school level, where you inculcate into people the sense
Of
the fact
patriotism.
that patriotism and work in itself
Yeah.
is important and is beautiful.
I am happy you have touched on something I have always had opportunity of talking about. You touched on motivation. You touched on the fact that it's not got to do with pay. Motivation should not necessarily be pay. I guess if you find yourself in a work environment where you have logistics to work, where you have a very cordial atmosphere to perform, then if you don't perform, you stand a chance of being queried or being. So if these things are also not there, that can shoot that stress levels up, and that in turn can affect productivity.
Well, yeah, it's a chicken and egg story. Which
Okay.
one starts what? I mean, it becomes a difficult thing to tell. But you need to break that chain. So at what level would you break it? Yes, employment, environments of workplaces should try and build motivation and other things into them. In fact, sometimes you don't even blame the workers. The resources to work with
Are not there.
So yes, there's that responsibility on part of employers to provide a good atmosphere, motivate their workers, and provide the resources to work. And then from the other side, the workers too need to change their attitude and need to put in more into producing.
Okay. All right. So viewers, if you are with us, this is Single Spine, the issues, and we are looking at performance management in the public sector, and we're linking pay to productivity. My guest in the studio, Mr. Emmanuel Kwame, Director, Performance Management, Monitoring and Evaluation with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Dr. Shaibu Ahmed Gariba is the Director, General Management Development and Productivity Institute. He's also a labor economist. We will go to the phone lines, pick a few calls. If you have concerns to share with us, why not? You can do that. I've just been informed that someone is on the line with us. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
We're listening to you. You are live. We can hear you.
My name is Ofosu.
Ofosu, okay.
Yeah. I'm from Joseph. I'm working with the Joseph Service.
You are working with...
Service.
Statistical service.
Okay, statistical service.
Service.
Ofosu,
Yeah,
let's hear
I'm
you.
Joseph Service of Ghana.
Okay, let's hear you. Speak up a bit for us.
Okay. our overtime allowances have not been paid since last year, September. Our overtime allowances have not been paid since last year, September. So,
Okay, well, Ofosu, I get your concerns. We've had opportunity of talking about allowances and all that. Today, we are discussing performance management in the public sector. And so I'm sorry, my guests here, none of them can answer your allowances which have not been paid for the past 10 months. If you also have something to share with us, why not? 0509 079208, 0509 0509 079208 is the line to call, and then you can join us with your concerns. Good. Let me come over to you, Mr. Kwame. Okay, I've just been informed again that we have someone else on the line. Hello? Hello? It looks like we have lost this one. Have a little bit patience with us, and then take your time. When you get onto this program, mention your name, where you're calling us from, and then you go ahead. Your name? Hello? Hello? Reduce the volume on your set or move away from your radio so we can avoid the noise in the background.
hello?
Yes, hello, your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, hello, we can hear you.
Give me the people. I want to talk to them.
Go ahead, you speak up, we can hear you. It looks like we are having some technical challenges.
Yeah.
If you look at current systems and structures as we have in the public sector, you have spoken earlier on, I mean, the need for us to improve on these structures. But how soon do you think we can do this so that then we merit the pay that is being given to us?
Yeah, you know, the idea of performance management is borrowed from the private sector.
Yeah.
Before the advent of new public management, which brings about performance management in the public service, we used to have public administration.
Yeah.
Now, public administration and public management are quite different. They are quite different. So the structures and the systems that we have in the public service today were informed by public administration.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to have an effective performance management,
Hold on for me, Mr. Kwame.
Yep.
I will pick another call and then we will come over to you so you move ahead with your point.
okay.
Hello? Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening. Tell us your name
Yeah,
and where
I'm
you're calling
Bernard.
from.
I'm Bernard calling from Anla Park, please.
Okay. Bernard, let's hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about public sector productivity,
Yeah.
I just want to find out how, for example, in the schools that we have, how can productivity be measured since we have individual differences when it comes to children learning and teachers also teaching? So how will such a thing be measured? Because some time ago, we heard of something we call spam. And currently, these things are not existing. So what actually is happening when you are trying to measure productivity in terms of schools? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll give this one to Dr. Gariba.
Well, I've said that the
Yeah.
service sector is a difficult area,
Difficult, yes.
and it has to be specific to the particular sector or particular business. If you take the educational sector, I know people have used students' test scores
Yeah.
as a way to evaluate the productivity
Yeah.
of the institution or even of the teachers. There are other ways you can look at it. In universities, there's research. You can look at it that way. So it has to be specific to the particular. If you take the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare, and you take the Ministry of Agric, they're doing two different things. Okay, one, that social protection, and the other is into actually facilitating production of actual goods. So they will be different. So it has to be specific, and that's why I said each ministry or this thing needs to get people who have a knowledge of the measuring productivities to sit down with them and do the flow chart so that they have key indicators.
Okay. I'm told we have someone else on the line. Hello? Hello? Oh, we have lost this caller on the line. You were also talking about specifics, and that quickly brought to mind, certain objectives. So it means that just as you made those comparisons, the various ministries should have specific objectives, and then it should go around what we have known as the SMART plan: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound.
Yeah.
And we have gone through all this, but you would agree with me again that it will change from one ministry to the other, or from one organization to the other. Let me pick another call, and then I will throw this one back to you. Hello? Hello?
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. Your name?
I'm Alfred, calling from Tamale.
Alfred from Tamale. Let's hear you.
Yes, I want to contribute to the program that is going on now.
Go ahead, Alfred.
Okay, I want to ask, you're talking about productivity, but in most of the public offices, you realize that there's a business within business going on. They themselves actually have tried to create a business in the public sector or in the offices in which they find themselves. So it's like they have their own agent that you have to pass through before you come to them. How are they going to solve that problem? And have they observed that there's something like that? And if there's anything like that, how is the system going to be improved so that we don't have a business within business? Because we know MP, for example, all the contract they have goes to them. Meanwhile, they're not supposed to do such a thing. If you go to non-valuation, for example, you have to pay them to work for you. If you want to come through the normal way, you are going to find it very tough, or they will frustrate you. So how will they solve this problem for us? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Which of you?
If I get him right, he's talking about the challenges in dealing with some of these agencies where you have to pay your way to get things done.
Yeah.
Well, it's a problem that we have to deal with. It's the corruption in the system, and we need to deal with that. Okay, that. Having said that, should not have an impact on looking at the productivity of people. It's true that, yes, they pay to get it done. The question is, do those people produce competently, and are they able to give you an output that you like? It's a different question from them taking monies to do it, because that's another level of things that we have to deal with. And I don't know, it's a big problem.
I think he has raised an important issue, and you attempted summarizing it. Whether the current structures that prevail in our institutions make it conducive for performance management to be achieved. Mr. Kwame.
Well, as I started saying, there is what we call
Hold on. This is the interruption I don't like sometimes.
Sorry.
We will have to go for another call. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, I'm on the line.
We can hardly hear you.
Hello?
We can hardly hear you. Speak up a bit for us.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Yes, I know, we know. So go ahead and then tell us
Mami,
your point.
I don't know. Hello?
We're
I don't know
listening
the
to
reason
you.
why this lady Samia, there is no any picture of the Samia campaign car.
It looks like we got a wrong call. Let me come back to you. I was asking whether the current structures we have in the various institutions really give confidence for performance management to be achieved.
Yeah, I'm afraid we may have to revise some
Yeah.
of the structures and systems,
Especially the bureaucratic ones.
especially the bureaucratic one. And as I started saying, you know, there's a paradigm shift. If you are talking about performance management, the way we are looking at it today, then it will be very difficult to implement it effectively on the systems that you have today. First of all, if you do performance management, then the immediate supervisor should have a lot of authority, you know, to sanction poor performance or to address poor performance in any way necessary. It could be, you know, motivating you, counseling you,
Yeah.
you know, withholding your increment, your annual increment, or taking you to training.
Training, yeah.
Yes, the structures that we have currently,
I've been informed again that we have someone on the line. Hello? Hello? Yes. You are live on.
Hello, I want
Yeah.
to find
Your name is?
I want to find out if Ghana Cocoa Board is on a single spine structure.
If what?
Ghana Cocoa Board.
Oh, Ghana
Is based
Cocoa
on a
Board.
single spine structure.
If Ghana Cocoa Board is on the single spine structure, okay, we will address this one for you. You finish your point, Mr. Kwame, and then
Yep.
we will.
so we'll have to revise our structures and systems. And I started by saying that, you know, as you rightly said, there's so much centralization. There's so much centralization in the public service today. You know, the Controller and Accountant General's Department
Yeah.
is responsible, you know, for pay administration, if you like, more or less. The payroll is centralized to the extent that if you are going to manage performance, which means that you as a manager should be able to decide on the training,
Yeah.
to decide on whether somebody gets, you know, promotion or not, to decide on whether somebody gets his
Deserves
annual
a bonus.
increment or not, and all those things.
Yeah.
You are not able to do it today with the centralized systems that we have. And there's this thing we call scheme of service in the public service.
Yeah.
They are still very rife today, you know, and this is what serves as a career, you know, your career progression and all those things, which says that, well, if you spend 3 years on this level, you must move to another level. To the extent that, well, you could have people progressing from one level to another and to another without any change in job load or, you know, responsibility at all. We still have all these things in the system. So if you are going to talk about performance management, then of course we have to look at reversing these systems. Otherwise, it will not work effectively.
All right, okay.
And
Let's go to the phone. I will return to you, Dr. Gariba. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. We can hear you. Go
Please,
ahead.
I'm Nami calling from Tamale.
Okay. Our sister from Tamale. Let's hear you.
I want to contribute to the program.
Go ahead, my dear.
We are talking about productivity. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, when you talk about productivity and how can productivity go on, if I've understood what the topic is about, when you come to the teaching field, for instance, we have teachers who have been in the field for a number of years, 2 years, 3 years, without pay. And where they are teaching is far away, outskirts of the town. And such teachers, if they have to pay their transportation to the school, come back in and out, there's no electricity there, the road is not good, it's a feeder road and dusty like that. I don't think productivity will go on well because such a teacher at the end of the month, there's nothing for him or her to take at the end. And such a teacher will always feel reluctant to go to school to teach because day in, day out, you keep going, you keep ferrying yourself. And at the end of the month, nothing is being given to you. It does not encourage such a worker to always put up the best for whatever is expected of him or her. So I think if only Ghana or we want our workers to be able to produce or to give out their best so that at the long run we'll have a good productivity of whatever we are aiming at a country, then maybe teachers or people who are in the field should reconsider people who are there and they don't have salaries. At least with that, when we talk about that, we'll be able to move ahead because I know when I'm giving my best out, I'm expecting something at the end of the month.
Okay.
Meanwhile, for you will be in the field for a number of years, there's nothing.
Okay, all right.
And such a thing will never encourage productivity to go on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very good point you have raised there. Dr. Gariba.
Well, I've said that employers have responsibilities.
Exactly.
I mean, you cannot just hire somebody, not give the person the tools to work with, and not, in fact, pay the person because salary, pay and incentives are motivation in some way to have the person work. So if you want to actually get people to be more productive, you have to provide the environment. And I think she has a good point. You don't put a teacher in a faraway village with no resources to work with logistics and in fact no pay
and you expect
them to produce anything. It doesn't happen. In fact, every country's incentive system is used to in such a way that it would develop promote skills in some areas and promote more productivity.
I think I would have to hammer on this point because I've been told that the next phase of the single spine policy that you're going to look at again, you're going to really look at pay and productivity. And so those who do not deserve, do not measure up in terms of performance, they will definitely be shortchanged. How true is this?
Yeah, that is very true. We said that we use performance management as a strategy, for productivity improvement. So it is very true. If you are going to base annual increments, the white paper says that after the implementation of the single spine, annual increment will cease to be automatic. That means it will be based on your performance. So it is very true. And in that case, we'll be using performance management as a strategy to promote productivity.
Am I then to understand that you will set key targets for the various institutions to meet these targets?
Yes. That is what strategic management is all about.
Exactly.
Yes. Once you have your strategic plan, or what other people call corporate plan.
Okay, or corporate plan.
Yes. You eventually derive individual performance targets from these plans.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it will be easier, relatively easier for both you, the supervisor, and your team member to actually agree that, well, I have been able to achieve set targets, or I have not been able to achieve set targets, and therefore it will make performance appraisal relatively more objective.
Okay, all right. Dr. Gariba, you wanted to
I think that we need to start from the macro level. What is happening now, and my understanding is that annual increments are based on GDP growth. That in itself is very misleading. I said we should start by tying annual increases to real GDP growth. What's the real GDP growth, rather than what the GDP growth itself is. If you tie it, because the real GDP growth actually is what the productivity of the country is. And if we tie it to that, then we can move on to the next stage. And in some jurisdictions, there's no wholesale increase to everybody. You may, if it's 20% increase, you may put 10% down as a wholesale, put 5% to specific organizations depending on them meeting their mandates, and the last 5% to individuals depending on them meeting their targets. So if you stagger it that way, then you begin to create a more competitive atmosphere for people to be more productive.
Let me briefly find out from you the relationship between Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and MDPI. What is the relationship like?
You want to take it?
You have a cordial...
We have been having some ongoing discussions and sitting down at the table to work out how we are going to be able to implement the white paper. By the end of the day, as I've always mentioned, if you're going to talk about productivity indicators, you have to bring in other stakeholders to the table.
Exactly.
Because everybody has to buy into what you're doing. So currently we are working with Fair Wages to develop the terms of reference and the groundwork for such a thing to take off.
It's been wonderful having you on our set today. Let me say a big thanks to you. Dr. Shaibu Ahmed Gariba is the Director General, Management, Development and Productivity Institute. He's also a labor economist, and he was with us today. Mr. Emmanuel Kwame is the Director in Charge, Performance Management, Monitoring and Evaluation of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Viewers, listeners, definitely next week we will continue with this very topic we discussed today, performance management, linking it to pay and productivity. And I've been informed that Mr. Smith Graham himself will be here with us, and we'll also have a rep from the Public Services Commission. So keep watching GTV, keep listening to Radio Ghana. We will be back same time next week, Saturday. My name is Cecil Ni Obodai Wintum. Thank you all, our production crew, our technical crew. We say a big thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.